day, my wonderful people. You're welcome to the channel and thank you for stopping by. This is Uglo Fashion. So today we'll be learning how to make this ruched dress with Basque effect. It has a puff sleeve and a keyhole at the front as well. This is the back. There is keyhole at the back also, and there is eyelet there. So please stay tuned and enjoy the tutorial. Thank you very much and stay blessed. For the tutorial, this is the fabric I'll be using. It's an Ankara fabric, and I'll be using this lining, this boning, the cup, but I did not eventually use the cup. So for the down part of the bodice, which is the skirt, I'll just subtract the gown length from the upper bodice. The gown length is 42 while the upper bodice is 20. So what I will have at the end of the day is 22 inches. And after getting that, I will multiply the half length circumference by 3. That is the total circumference of the half length by 3. So that is what I will use to get my gathered part. So if you don't understand what I mean, this is it. The circumference of the half length is 32, so it's folded in 3 places, you can see. Then the length, there is Basque there, so that's why I use 20 inches. So the length is 42 minus 20 will give me 22. Then I added 1 to it to make 23 inches. So I'll set that aside. I've drafted my bodice pattern on this paper. I measured the nipple points, the underbust, the half length. Then for the basque, I added like 3 inches to the half length. So the half length is 17 plus 3, it makes it 20 inches. Then after that, I try to snatch the waist a bit. So instead of using 27 inches, instead of using 32 inches, I subtracted 3 from the 37. So I got 29. So it was 29 I used for the half length circumference. So I divided the 29 by 4 and also divide the other bodice pattern by 4. So I shape out my 29 inches. So you can see how it looks. Then after this, I measure the nipple to nipple circumference. The nipple to nipple circumference is 7 inches divided by 2 gives me 3.5. So I started that from the nipple point down to the basque part. And I connected them together. I went ahead to cut the pattern out. Then also measure the neckline. I used 3 inches for the neckline. I used 3 by 5 inches. And it's a curved neck, so I just curved that part out. Then for the side, for the shoulder, I measured 1 inch for the slope, which I connected back to the neckline. I cut everything out. So this is what I have eventually, and I placed that on my another paper to cut the back bodies. So I added 2 inches back zipper allowance. Then I also drafted that part. This is the half length, and I measure half inch on both sides. So I set that aside and brought back the front bodice. So for the front bodice, you know it's Basque, so definitely from the, and if you check the style well, you will notice that the side did not start directly at the underbust. It's a bit below the underbust, so I measured 1 inch below the underbust, then slant it back to the underbust. Now after that, I came back to the Basque side. So for the Basque, the half length is 17 inches, and I added like 1.5 to the 17 inches to make 18.5. And I told you that I used 20 inches initially, so I just slant the 18.5 down to the 20 inches to make my Basque. That is the way I get the 20 inches. I measure from my shoulder to 1 inch after my navel. Now for the dart, I measured 5.5 inch at the half length, then I connected it back to the nipple point, and I did that for this side, so I connected it back to the half length. So I cut that out as well. Now after cutting, this is what I have. Then the upper part, I tried to first shape out the keyhole, so I measured half 1 inch up. Then I just try to divide whatever I have here. It's 7.5, so I just measured the half of it. Then I measure 1 inch there, and also back to the neckline here I measure half. That's for the keyhole, so I connected everything together. You can see the shape it gives. After that, I measured 1 inch. I also connect that. So I'm just going to cut this part out since it's the keyhole side. You can see. So now I'll start my slash and spread method. This is because of the ruched. So I just measure 1 inch. So for the last one, I made it a bit bigger, so I used 1 here, I used 1.5 here, and I used 1.5 here as well, and I connected that. So this is what I have. So this is how it looks. Then I went ahead to label them accordingly, 1, 2, 3, so I don't mix them up. So the last one, I measured 5 rather. I cut everything out and I placed them back on another paper. So in between I left like 1 inch. You can make yours more than that, but I'm okay with the 1 inch because I don't want it too puffy there. So I just use the ruler to trace out the shoulder and the neckline as well. So if you are cutting yours, the part I used 1 inch for, you can make yours 1.5, 2 inches. It depends on you. Then for this side as well, I traced it out. And I added 1 inch allowance. And I added half to this side as well. I cut that out and I cut the paper. After doing that, this first one, the one I labeled 1, will still be detached, so I added half inch to it. Then I cut it out. Now to the back bodies, I did the same thing I did at the front. I measured 1 inch after the underbust, then connected it back to the underbust. But the zipper allowance, I did not eventually use that because I later decided to put O at the back as well. So there was keyhole at the front and at the back as well. So I just separated the two. Then for the down, I cut out the darts. So this is what I have. So for the keyhole, I just shape this out. So you can use the same process I used for the front to make the back keyhole. So this is what I have at the end of the day. So I'll just stitch this way. Now I've cut out my pattern on my fabric and I added seam allowance to each. The side I added 2, and for the part that will be joined I added half, and I tried to notch the pleated parts. and I also cut the back bodies as well. So for the back, I decided to use eyelet, so I cut the zipper allowance as well. So first of all, I stitched the ruched part, then the first one I detached, I stitched it together, I stitched the lining to it, then added it back to the front, so, and I turned it with my lining. So, and this is the snatched part of it, and there's going to be bony here. So after stitching everything together, I ironed it. Then to make the boning channels, I cut the same fabric, I cut like 1.5 inches, then I stitch on the snatched part, or let me say the Basque area. So this is how I folded it back. After stitching one side, I folded the other side to make my boning channel. Then for the two sides, after pleating them, I stitched them on each other, and also stitched the Basque side on it. And I used my lining to turn them together, to turn the stitched parts. So I pinned the middle together, and I stitch on it. This is the back bodies I've turned with my lining. So for the snatched part of this as well, I've joined the two together. Then I'll be stitching my boning channels on this as well. So for the boning channels, I try to notch where the boning channels will be. So I measured like 2 inches from the dart area, then I notched it, and I measure another and notched. After stitching my boning channels, I did the same process at the back, joining them together. So after joining, I ironed them. I stitched both front and back bodies as well, since the down part is gathered. I also stitched the shoulder together. So this is what I have at the end of the day. And for the gathered parts, which is the skirt, I stitched like 2 lines there, then I pulled the thread. So after pulling, I ensure that it's aligned with the upper bodies, then I stitch them together. So I just loosed small. I loosed small from the back, then I added zipper to the gathered part. Then for the sleeve, I first measure 5-inch, 10-inch, and there's going to be band there. So after the 5 and the 10-inch, I roll them out. The length of the sleeve is 22, so I measured all the 22 inches, despite the fact that there's still going to be band there. And the circumference of the shoulder of the bicep is 13, so I used 13 all through. And also added 1 inch. That's because the sleeve is big, it's very big, bigger than the normal circumference of the sleeve, so I added 1 inch. Then after this, I connected them and later add 1 inch for seam allowance. Then I added 1 inch to this side, and I connected it to make the armholes loop there. So yeah, I measured like 3 inches, then just shape this. Yeah, that's because there's going to be puff. It's going to have puff, yeah. Please, I did not remember this. I folded this fabric into 4, into 2. So this is the band. I cut 10 inches. The circumference of the wrist is just 9, so I cut 10 inch by 10 by 10. That's because I'm still going to fold this into 2, so the band is 5 inches. So I first stitch the side on the wrong side of the fabric. After stitching, I turned it, then I notched the middle, so I'll stitch on it again just to hold it down. And I notch the sleeve and pin the middle together. Then I gathered the remaining on the band. So this is what I have. Then I just stitch the measurements. So I went ahead to stitch to the shoulder. So thank you very much for watching this video to the end. If this is your first time, please subscribe to the channel if this video has done you any good. And for my returning subscriber, thank you very much.